My mother-in-law Eleanor was in the kitchen when I went to get some water before my big presentation. She hummed, stirring a cup of tea. For Alex, she chirped as my wife Chloe walked in. His big day. This herbal mix is wonderfully calming. She winked at me, pushing the cup across the granite counter. When Chloe turned to grab a glass from the cupboard, I saw Eleanor's hand move, quick as a snake. She tipped a tiny, clear veil into my teacup, then palmed it and slipped it into her apron pocket. Her smile was back instantly, fixed and overly bright. Drink up, dear. For your nerves, I thanked her, my mind racing. Smells great, Eleanor. Richard, my father-in-law, wandered in, flipping through the newspaper. Why, Alex, ready to wow them today? He asked, his tone implying he doubted it. I'm Alex Turner, 33, an independent architect. I run my own small firm. It's not a 9 to 5, and it sure as hell isn't what the Ainsworths envisioned for their daughter Chloe. They pictured someone safer. More like Richard, a retired surgeon who measured life in hospital wings named after donors and stock portfolios. This presentation today was for the new City Arts Center, a career-defining project. Winning it would put my firm on the map. Eleanor knew. Chloe knew. And apparently Eleanor had a plan for it. Actually, Richard, I said, picking up the teacup, you look like you could use a calm moment yourself. All this excitement for me, you know? I offered him the cup. He looked surprised. Oh, well, don't mind if I do. He took a large gulp. Eleanor's smile faltered for a microsecond. I'll just grab some coffee, I said, heading for the machine. 45 minutes later, as I was double-checking my digital presentation files, Richard turned a pale green. He clutched his stomach, making a dash for the guest bathroom. The sounds that followed weren't pretty. Eleanor rushed after him, her face a mask of poorly feigned concern. Chloe looked worried. Dad, are you okay? Must be something I ate last night. Richard groaned from behind the door. Eleanor's eyes met mine over Chloe's concerned head. There was a flicker in them, panic, then anger. She knew, and she knew I knew. The immediate chaos meant I couldn't leave for the presentation venue on time to do my usual calming pre-pitch routine. I ended up having them run my pre-recorded pitch. It went well. The committee seemed impressed, but the edge was off my personal delivery. I felt rattled, not by the presentation, but by Eleanor. Are you okay, Alex? Chloe asked later that evening. You seem off. Was it Dad getting sick? Or the presentation? Just a long day, I said. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not without proof. But something inside me had hardened. This wasn't just disapproval anymore. This was sabotage. The next day, I scraped some residue from the teacup Richard had used, the one Eleanor had doctored. I took it to Leo Maxwell, an old college friend who now ran a private chemistry lab. Personal favor, Leo, can you tell me what's in this? No questions asked. Preferably. 3 days later, Leo called. Alex, that tea sample loaded with benzodiazepines. Not enough to kill, but plenty to make someone incredibly groggy, confused, maybe even blackout for a bit. Definitely enough to ruin a presentation. Where'd you get this? Family recipe, I said grimly. Send me the report, will you? I didn't confront Eleanor directly. Instead, I waited. At Sunday dinner, which I couldn't avoid, I watched her. She was extra solicitous with Richard, extra sharp with me. So, Alex, that Art Center project still up in the air, is it? Richard asked, looking recovered but still pale. The committee is deliberating, I said. Such a demanding field, Eleanor sighed, patting Chloe's hand. So much uncertainty. Not like your father's work or even Mark Denton's. Stability is so important, dear. Mark Denton, Chloe's lawyer ex, the one they'd adored, the one they'd somehow driven away before I met Chloe. Chloe stiffened. Mom, Alex is a brilliant architect. Of course, dear, brilliant. But brilliance doesn't always pay the mortgage reliably. Her smile was sweet poison. I started digging. Eleanor had prescriptions for anxiety medication from 3 different doctors. Multiple refills. Leo's report specified the type of benzodiazepine, and it matched one of Eleanor's prescriptions. She wasn't just anxious, she was playing chemist. Then Chloe mentioned her older sister, Sarah. Sarah lived across the country estranged. Mom's been trying to get Sarah to visit, Chloe said. Sarah's not biting. They had a huge fight years ago over her husband David. Mom and Dad hated him. An idea sparked. I found Sarah Vance online, sent her a cautious email. My name is Alex Turner, Chloe's husband. I'm having some issues with her parents, and I have a feeling you might understand. To my surprise, Sarah called me the next day. Her voice was wary. What kind of issues? I told her about the tea, the presentation, my suspicions. There was a long silence. I'm not surprised, Sarah said finally, her voice flat. They did it to me. Not with drugs, but other ways. David wasn't good enough. He was a musician. What did they do? Turned Chloe against him, subtly at first. Made up stories. Made him seem unreliable, financially reckless. They even got, I haven't thought about this in years, they faked an email exchange between him and another woman. Showed it to me. I believed them. I broke up with him. How did you find out it was fake? David fought it. He hired someone, proved the emails were spoofed, originating from a masked IP address they eventually traced back to a public library near their house. By then, it was too late for us, but it opened my eyes. Richard was the scarier one, you know. Eleanor is loud, but Dad, he's the quiet planner. He would have figured out the tech side of it. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just Eleanor. This was a team effort. Did they ever try to control Chloe this way before? Mark Denton, Sarah said immediately. They loved him on paper, lawyer, good family. But he had opinions. He encouraged Chloe's independence. They didn't like that. I don't know the details, but he was gone pretty fast. I thanked Sarah. She offered to help if she could. I have some old journals from that time, she said. Maybe there's something in there about their methods. Next, I tracked down Mark Denton. He was a partner at a big firm now. He was reluctant to talk. The Ainsworths, that's ancient history. That might not be, I said, and explained the situation, focusing on the manipulation, not just the tea. He listened. Then he sighed. Okay, look, they're masters. Eleanor plays the emotional card, Richard backs it up with money and perceived authority. With me, they started rumors. Told Chloe I was seeing an old girlfriend. When she confronted me, I denied it, obviously. Then they somehow got into her email, sent messages from her account to this ex, making it look like Chloe was obsessed and jealous. The ex, confused, sent a leave me alone reply. Chloe saw it, thought I'd lied about everything. Did you ever figure out how they got into her email? Never proved it. But her parents had helped her set up her first laptop years before, probably knew her passwords or security questions. It was insidious. They made me the bad guy, and Chloe ran right back to them. He sounded bitter even now. They want to control her, Alex, completely. Anyone who threatens that becomes a target. Sarah sent me scanned pages from her journal. Detailed accounts of Eleanor's emotional blackmail, Richard's veiled threats about cutting off financial support for her education if she didn't see sense, about David. I now had the lab report, Eleanor's prescription history, Sarah's testimony, and Mark's story. A clear, ugly pattern. It was time to tell Chloe. I dreaded it. These were her parents. I chose a quiet evening. I laid it all out, the tea, Leo's report, what Sarah had told me, what Mark had confirmed. I showed her the journal pages. Chloe listened, her face growing paler with each revelation. At first, denial. No, Mom wouldn't, Dad wouldn't. They love me. I know they love you, Chloe. But this is about control. They've done it before. Sarah always exaggerated. And Mark, maybe he was just bitter. Chloe, I said gently, remember that photo Mark supposedly sent to his ex? The one your mom found on his old social media page. Mark had sent me the original, untampered photo, and the subtly photoshopped one her parents had shown her. The background was slightly altered in the fake one to place him somewhere he claimed he wasn't. I pulled them up on my laptop, side by side. She stared at the two images, her breath catching. The difference was small, but undeniable once you knew what to look for. That was the crack. She put her head in her hands. Oh my God! Tears came then. Gut-wrenching sobs. I held her. There were no easy words. When she finally looked up, her eyes were raw but clear. What they did to Sarah, to Mark, and now to you, to us. Her voice was quiet but filled with a new steel. They won't get away with it. Not this time. We're in this together, I asked. Absolutely, she said, gripping my hand. What's the plan? Sarah agreed to fly in. Chloe's younger brother, Daniel, and his wife, Emily, were also invited for what Eleanor probably thought was a reconciliatory dinner after the unfortunate incident with Richard's stomach bug. We arrived at the Ainsworths' imposing home. Sarah was already there, a calm counterpoint to Eleanor's forced cheerfulness and Richard's bluff attempts at bonhomie. Daniel and Emily looked a little confused by the tension. After the pretense of a meal, Chloe stood up. Mom, Dad, we need to talk. About what, darling? Eleanor asked, feigning innocence. About this, I said, placing a small audio recorder on the table alongside a folder. I hadn't recorded them without consent before, but Sarah had sent me an old voicemail from Eleanor that was particularly manipulative during her ordeal with David. And this. I started with the tea incident, laying out Leo's lab report. Eleanor scoffed. Preposterous! You must have gotten hold of my medication by accident. Or perhaps you're trying to frame me, Alex. Feeling the pressure of your career, are you? Richard nodded. This is an outrageous accusation, Alex. Then Sarah spoke. Calmly, she detailed what they'd done to her and David, the fake emails, the emotional blackmail. She played the old voicemail from Eleanor, a tearful, manipulative message about how Sarah was destroying the family by choosing David. Daniel looked shocked. Mom, is that true? Eleanor's face was white. Sarah always misunderstood things. She was young, impressionable. I was 25, Mom, and I have journal entries from that time documenting Dad's threats about my college funds. Sarah looked at Richard, who stared stonily back. Next, I detailed Mark Denton's story, the email hacking, the manufactured evidence, showing them the side-by-side photos. Chloe corroborated, her voice trembling but firm, how they had presented the evidence against Mark. Emily, Daniel's wife, suddenly spoke up. Eleanor, you told me last month that the new friends Daniel and I made weren't our kind of people. You said you'd heard some unpleasant rumors about them. Were those true? Eleanor flustered. I was just looking out for you. Emily, Richard finally slammed his hand on the table. Enough of this. This is a family matter, not a courtroom drama. Alex, you've clearly orchestrated this, poisoning our children against us. No, Dad? Chloe said, her voice ringing with clarity. Alex opened our eyes. You've been poisoning our lives for years with your control and manipulation. Sarah's, mine, even Daniel's, in your own way. It stops now. Daniel looked from Chloe to Sarah, then at his parents. The confident bluster was gone from Richard. Eleanor just looked old. Mom, Dad, is this why you never liked any of my girlfriends until Emily, and even then, you tried to find fault? Eleanor burst into tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a queen whose castle was crumbling. Richard said nothing, his jaw tight. Here are our terms. Chloe announced. You will never interfere in our lives, our marriage, or Alex's career again. You will treat Alex with respect. You will not try to manipulate us, or Daniel and Emily, or anyone else in this family. If you do, all of this evidence, Sarah's journals, Mark's testimony, the lab reports, these recordings will be shared with your entire social circle, your former colleagues, Richard, everyone on the board of your precious charities. I added, we don't want to do that. We'd prefer a family, but a healthy one. The choice is yours. Richard finally looked at me, a flicker of something new in his eyes. Not respect, not yet. Maybe calculation. He nodded once, curtly. Eleanor just sobbed. 6 months passed in a strange quiet. We saw Eleanor and Richard at obligatory family events. They were polite, distant, no advice, no barbs. Then, Chloe got pregnant. We told them over dinner. Eleanor's shock gave way to genuine tears, this time perhaps a little softer. Richard was stiff but congratulated us. A week later, a lawyer contacted us. Richard and Eleanor had anonymously gifted us the down payment for a beautiful mid-century house we'd been admiring, the one Alex had said would be a dream to renovate. No strings attached. Chloe saw it as an olive branch. I saw it as them trying to buy back favor, but without direct manipulation. Richard also tried a different tactic. He invited me to lunch. Alex, he said, your firm is doing well, but have you considered expansion? Stability. I have connections at a large architectural corporation. They're looking for fresh talent. I could get you an interview for a senior position. Generous salary, benefits. I swirled the water in my glass. Richard, I appreciate the thought, but I like my firm. I like my independence. His jaw tightened. Don't be a fool, Alex. This is a real opportunity. It's another way to control things, isn't it? Get me into a proper job, one you approve of. I smiled. Thanks, but no thanks. My unstable career is doing just fine. In fact, I just landed the Arts Center project. It had been confirmed a month prior. He stared at me, then a reluctant, almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of his mouth. He raised his glass. To the Arts Center, then. Our son Leo, named after my supportive chemist friend, was born the following spring. Eleanor and Richard doted on him, but from a new, respectful distance. They asked before visiting. They didn't offer unsolicited advice. My firm grew. The Arts Center was a triumph. One evening, Richard called me. Alex, the museum charity I'm on, we're looking at a small annex. Got some preliminary designs from a big firm. They lack vision. Would you, be willing to take an informal look? Offer an opinion. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't friendship. But it was, in its own way, an acknowledgement. Send them over. Richard, I said. I'll see what I think. A few years later, Alex Turner Designs was flourishing. We lived in the renovated mid-century house filled with light and laughter. Chloe had her own successful gallery now. Our relationship with her parents had settled into a kind of truce. Civil, infrequent, but no longer toxic. One evening, Chloe and I were on the patio, watching Leo chase fireflies. Do you think they've really changed? Chloe mused. I thought about it. Eleanor still sent slightly passive-aggressive Christmas cards, but they were mostly harmless. Richard occasionally forwarded me articles on architecture he found interesting. No, I said finally. I don't think people like that fundamentally change. But they've accepted they can't change us. They know there are consequences now, and sometimes that's enough. We built this, Chloe. I gestured to our home, our life. Not them. Thus, I hadn't played their game with schemes and counter-manipulation. I'd simply refused to be a pawn, armed myself with truth, and stood my ground alongside the woman I loved. And that, I realized, was the only way to truly win. Building a life on our own terms, filled with integrity and the quiet joy of earned peace.